Sarah Martinez adjusted her simple black jacket as she approached the imposing gates of Fort Harrison Military Base. The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete barriers and razor wire that surrounded the facility. At 28 years old, she had learned to dress down when visiting military installations, knowing that her youthful appearance often caused people to underestimate her. The guard booth stood like a small fortress at the entrance, manned by a burly sergeant whose name tag read Thompson. His thick arms crossed over his chest as he watched Sarah approach with obvious skepticism. She carried a worn leather briefcase and walked with the confident stride of someone who belonged there, but Thompson saw only a young woman who looked lost. "Excuse me." "Miss," Thompson called out, his voice gruff and dismissive. "This is a restricted military facility. You can't just walk up here." Sarah stopped at the checkpoint window and smiled politely. "Good morning, Sergeant. I'm here for the morning briefing with Colonel Stevens. I believe I'm expected." Thompson's eyes narrowed as he looked her up and down. She wore no uniform, carried no obvious military identification, and looked far too young to have any business on a secure base. In his 15 years of guard duty, he had developed a sixth sense about people who didn't belong, and this woman definitely didn't belong. "Expected?" Thompson laughed harshly. "Lady, do you have any idea where you are? This isn't some tourist attraction. This is Fort Harrison, one of the most secure military installations in the country." "I understand that completely," Sarah replied, maintaining her calm demeanor. "If you could just check your visitor list, you'll find my name there. Sarah Martinez." Thompson didn't even glance at his computer screen. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and shook his head. "I don't need to check anything. You're clearly in the wrong place. Maybe you're looking for the civilian employment office downtown. That's about 10 miles back the way you came." Sarah's smile began to fade, but she kept her voice steady. "Sergeant Thompson, I really do need to get inside. I have an appointment at 800 hours, and it's now 07:45. Could you please verify my clearance?" "Clearance?" Thompson burst out laughing. "You think you have clearance? Miss, I've been doing this job longer than you've probably been out of high school. I can spot someone who doesn't belong here from a mile away, and you definitely don't belong here." The sergeant stood up from his chair, his impressive height of 6 feet 4 inches meant to intimidate. "Now, I'm going to ask you nicely one more time to turn around and leave. This is a secure facility, and I don't have time to play games with confused civilians." Sarah took a deep breath, her patience wearing thin. She had dealt with this type of situation before, but it never got easier. "Sergeant, I'm not confused, and I'm not playing games. I'm here on official business, and I really need you to check your system." "Official business?" Thompson's voice dripped with sarcasm. "What kind of official business could someone like you possibly have here? You look like you should be serving coffee at some downtown cafe, not walking around a military base." The insult stung, but Sarah had learned long ago not to let her emotions show in situations like this. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. "Perhaps this will help clarify things." Thompson didn't even look at the folder. "I don't care what papers you think you have. Anyone can print documents these days. What I need to see is proper military identification. And since you clearly don't have any, you need to leave. But if you would just look at—" "No buts," Thompson interrupted firmly. "I'm not looking at anything. You don't have military ID. You don't have a security badge, and you certainly don't look like someone who would have business here. This conversation is over." Sarah felt her frustration mounting, but she forced herself to remain professional. "Sergeant, I understand you're doing your job, but you're making a mistake. I do have authorization to be here." Thompson's face reddened with anger. "Are you telling me how to do my job? I've been protecting this base since before you were probably even thinking about college. I know who belongs here and who doesn't, and you don't. I'm not questioning your experience," Sarah said carefully. "I'm simply asking you to follow protocol and verify my appointment." "Protocol?" Thompson stepped closer to the window. "Protocol is that civilians without proper identification don't get past this gate. Period. End of discussion." Sarah could see that reasoning with the sergeant was getting nowhere. His mind was made up, and he had no intention of checking his computer or listening to anything she had to say. She glanced at her watch, 7:50 hours. The meeting would start in 10 minutes, and she was still stuck at the front gate. "Sergeant Thompson," she tried one more time. "There are going to be some very unhappy people if I don't make it to this meeting on time." Thompson waved his hand dismissively. The only unhappy person here is going to be you if you don't turn around and leave right now. I'm losing my patience with this whole charade. Sarah realized she was fighting a losing battle. The sergeant had clearly decided she didn't belong there, and nothing she said was going to change his mind. She pulled out her cell phone, knowing she would have to make some calls to resolve the situation. "What are you doing now?" Thompson demanded. "I'm calling to let them know I've been delayed at the gate," Sarah replied. "Put that phone away," Thompson ordered. "No unauthorized photography or communication near the entrance." "That's another security violation?" Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "I'm not taking pictures. I'm making a phone call. I don't care what you think you're doing. Put the phone away and leave the premises immediately, or I'll have to call for backup to escort you out." The situation had escalated beyond anything Sarah had expected. She had encountered difficult security personnel before, but never anyone this obstinate. As she stood there trying to figure out her next move, she noticed a black sedan approaching the gate from inside the base. Thompson saw the car too and straightened up, recognizing it as an official vehicle. But his attention quickly returned to Sarah, whom he still considered a problem that needed to be removed from his post. "Last warning," he said firmly. "Leave now or I'm calling for assistance." Sarah looked at the approaching sedan, then back at the stubborn sergeant. She had a feeling that the next few minutes were going to be very interesting, and that Sergeant Thompson was about to learn something important about making assumptions. The black sedan rolled to a stop just inside the gate, and Sarah could see 3 figures in military dress uniforms through the tinted windows. Sergeant Thompson noticed the vehicle but was too focused on his confrontation with Sarah to pay it much attention. He had dealt with official vehicles before, and right now his priority was removing what he saw as a security threat from his checkpoint. "That's it," Thompson declared, reaching for his radio. "I'm calling for backup to remove you from the premises. You've had multiple warnings and you're still here causing problems." Sarah watched as the sedan's doors opened simultaneously. 3 men stepped out, their uniforms crisp and their bearing unmistakably that of high-ranking military officers. Even from a distance, she could see the stars on their shoulders gleaming in the morning sunlight. Her heart began to race, not from fear, but from the anticipation of what was about to unfold. Thompson was busy speaking into his radio, requesting assistance to remove an unauthorized civilian from the gate area. His back was turned to the approaching officers, and he was completely unaware that the situation was about to change dramatically. "Security to Gate 1, he spoke into his radio. "I need immediate assistance with a civilian who refuses to leave the checkpoint area. Subject is a young female, approximately 5'6", brown hair, carrying a briefcase. She claims to have official business but has no proper identification." The radio crackled back with confirmation that backup was on the way. Thompson felt satisfied that he was handling the situation properly. In his mind, he was protecting the base from a potential security breach, exactly as he had been trained to do. Sarah could now clearly see the 3 generals approaching. The man in the center wore the 3 stars of a lieutenant general, while the 2 flanking him each wore the 2 stars of major generals. Their expressions were serious, and they walked with the purposeful stride of men accustomed to command. "Sergeant Thompson," Sarah said quietly, "you might want to turn around. I don't want to hear another word from you," Thompson snapped without turning. "You've caused enough trouble for one morning. Just stand there quietly until security arrives to escort you off the base." The lead general, a distinguished man in his 50s with graying hair and piercing blue eyes, reached the checkpoint first. His name tag read Morrison, and the 3 stars on his collar identified him as Lieutenant General Morrison, the base commander. The 2 major generals flanking him were General Williams and General Chen, both key figures in the base's command structure. "Sergeant," General Morrison called out in a voice that commanded immediate attention. Thompson spun around so quickly, he nearly lost his balance. When he saw the 3 generals standing there, his face went pale. He immediately snapped to attention, his entire demeanor changing in an instant. "Sir." "Good morning, sir," Thompson stammered, clearly flustered by the unexpected appearance of such high-ranking officers. General Morrison's eyes moved from Thompson to Sarah, and his expression softened slightly. "Ms. Martinez, I see you've encountered some difficulty at our gate this morning." Thompson's jaw dropped. The generals knew this woman by name. His mind raced as he tried to process what was happening. How could these high-ranking officers possibly know a civilian who looked like she belonged in a college classroom, rather than a military briefing room? "Yes, sir," Sarah replied professionally. "I've been trying to explain to Sergeant Thompson that I have an appointment for the 800 briefing, but he refused to check the visitor authorization system." General Morrison turned his attention back to Thompson, whose face had now turned several shades redder. "Sergeant, did you check the authorization system as requested?" Thompson's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Sir, She didn't have proper military identification, sir. I was following standard security protocols, sir." "Standard protocols include checking the visitor authorization system when someone claims to have an appointment," General Williams interjected, his tone sharp with disapproval. "Sir." "Yes, sir, but she looked," Thompson began, then stopped himself before he could dig himself into an even deeper hole. "She looked like what, Sergeant?" General Chen asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Thompson realized he was trapped. Any explanation he gave would only make the situation worse. "Sir, I made an error in judgment, sir." General Morrison stepped closer to the checkpoint booth. "Ms. Martinez is one of our most valued civilian consultants. She has been working with the Pentagon on classified projects for the past 3 years. Her security clearance level is higher than yours, Sergeant." The blood drained from Thompson's face as the full magnitude of his mistake became clear. He had not only refused entry to an authorized visitor, but to someone with higher security clearance than his own. This was the kind of mistake that could end a military career. "Furthermore," General Morrison continued, "Ms. Martinez is here this morning to brief us on a matter of national security importance. Her expertise in cybersecurity and intelligence analysis has been personally requested by the Joint Chiefs of Staff." Sarah remained silent, watching as Thompson processed this information. She could see the panic building in his eyes as he realized the consequences of his actions. The meeting he had prevented her from attending wasn't just any routine briefing. It was a critical security consultation that had been months in the planning. "Sir," Thompson said weakly, "I had no way of knowing." "You had every way of knowing," General Williams cut him off. "You had a computer system specifically designed to verify visitor authorizations. You chose not to use it because you made assumptions based on appearance." General Chen stepped forward. "Sergeant, how long have you been in the military?" 15 years, sir." "And in those 15 years, have you never learned that the military values people based on their abilities and contributions, not their appearance?" Thompson's shoulders sagged. "Yes, sir." "I mean, no, sir. I mean—" He stopped, knowing that anything he said would only make things worse. General Morrison looked at his watch. The briefing was scheduled to begin at 800. It's now 0755. "Thanks to your refusal to follow proper procedures, we're running behind schedule on a matter that affects national security." Sarah finally spoke up. "Generals, if we could proceed to the briefing room, we can still begin on time. The technical equipment needs a few minutes to set up anyway." General Morrison nodded. "Of course. Sergeant Thompson, you will open the gate immediately and provide Ms. Martinez with a VIP escort pass for the duration of her stay." "Yes, sir," Thompson practically shouted, scrambling to his computer terminal. His hand shook as he typed, finally accessing the visitor authorization system he should have checked 30 minutes earlier. There on the screen, highlighted in red as a high-priority visitor, was Sarah Martinez's name, along with her photograph and security clearance level. The notation next to her entry read, "VIP Consultant, Direct Pentagon Authorization, Escort to Building 7 Conference Room A." Thompson's face went ashen as he realized the full scope of his error. Not only had he refused entry to an authorized visitor, but to someone with VIP status and direct Pentagon authorization. This was career-ending material. "The pass, Sergeant," General Morrison reminded him firmly. "Yes, sir, right away, sir," Thompson replied, printing out a VIP visitor badge with trembling hands. As Sergeant Thompson fumbled with the visitor badge printer, his hands continued to shake noticeably. The machine seemed to take forever to process the VIP pass, each second stretching into an eternity under the watchful eyes of 3 generals. The weight of his mistake pressed down on him like a physical force, and he could feel sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. General Morrison maintained his stern expression while checking his watch again. "Time is of the essence here, Sergeant. This briefing involves intelligence that has significant implications for ongoing operations. "The printer is almost finished, sir," Thompson replied, his voice barely above a whisper. He had never felt smaller in his 15 years of military service. The machine finally dispensed the bright red VIP badge, which he handed to Sarah with shaking hands. Sarah clipped the badge to her jacket and picked up her briefcase. "Thank you, Sergeant," she said simply, showing no trace of anger or vindication in her voice. Her professional demeanor impressed the generals, who had witnessed many civilians become emotional or confrontational in similar situations. General Williams stepped closer to Thompson's booth. "Sergeant, we'll be discussing your performance here with your commanding officer later today. For now, focus on doing your job correctly." "Sir, yes, sir," Thompson replied, standing at rigid attention. He watched as the group began walking toward the base entrance, feeling like his entire career was crumbling around him. As they walked across the courtyard, General Morrison addressed Sarah directly. "I apologize for the delay, Ms. Martinez. This kind of situation reflects poorly on our security protocols and training standards." Sarah shook her head. "No apology necessary, General. I understand that security personnel have difficult jobs, and they encounter all kinds of people trying to gain unauthorized access. Sergeant Thompson was trying to protect the base." General Chen looked at her with surprise. "That's very gracious of you considering how you were treated." "I've learned that holding grudges doesn't accomplish anything productive," Sarah replied. "What matters now is getting to the briefing and addressing the security concerns that brought me here." The three generals exchanged glances, clearly impressed by Sarah's maturity and professionalism. Many civilians in her position would have demanded disciplinary action or made formal complaints. Her focus remained entirely on the mission at hand. As they approached Building 7, a large concrete structure with minimal windows and heavy security doors, General Morrison continued the conversation. "Your reputation precedes you, Ms. Martinez. The Pentagon speaks very highly of your work on the Eastern European cyber intrusion case." "That was a team effort," Sarah replied modestly. "I was fortunate to work with some exceptional intelligence analysts on that project." General Williams opened the heavy security door using his keycard. "Modest as well as brilliant. The reports we received indicated that your analysis was crucial in identifying the attack vectors. The interior of Building 7 was exactly what Sarah had expected. Sterile corridors lined with numbered doors, each requiring different levels of security clearance to access. The fluorescent lighting cast everything in a harsh institutional glow. Their footsteps echoed as they walked toward Conference Room A. "The situation we're dealing with today is potentially more serious than the Eastern European incident," General Morrison explained as they walked. "We've detected sophisticated probing of our communications networks that suggests a highly coordinated effort." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "The preliminary data you sent suggested multiple entry points being tested simultaneously. That level of coordination usually indicates state-level resources." "Exactly," General Chen confirmed. "We need your expertise to help us understand the full scope of what we're facing and develop appropriate countermeasures." They reached Conference Room A, where General Morrison used his keycard to unlock the door. The room was spacious but windowless, dominated by a large oval table surrounded by high-backed chairs. Multiple screens lined the walls, currently displaying various network diagrams and security monitoring displays. "The technical team has already set up the equipment you requested," General Williams informed Sarah. "All of the network logs and traffic analysis data are loaded and ready for your review." Sarah set her briefcase on the table and opened it, revealing a sophisticated laptop and several external drives. "Thank you. I'll need about 10 minutes to connect my analysis tools to your systems." As Sarah began setting up her equipment, the three generals took seats around the table. General Morrison activated a secure communication panel. "This briefing is classified at the highest levels. Everyone involved has signed appropriate non-disclosure agreements." "Understood," Sarah replied, connecting cables between her laptop and the room's display systems. "The techniques I'll be demonstrating today are some of the most advanced forensic analysis methods currently available." General Chen leaned forward with interest. "We've heard that you've developed some innovative approaches to tracking sophisticated intrusions." Sarah smiled as her laptop synchronized with the room's systems. "Traditional methods focus on where attackers have been. My techniques focus on predicting where they're going next." The main display screen flickered to life, showing a complex visualization of network traffic patterns. Sarah's analysis software had already begun processing the data, identifying anomalies and patterns that would be invisible to conventional security tools. "This is remarkable," General Williams said, studying the display. "I've never seen network data visualized this way before." "The key is understanding that modern cyber attacks aren't random," Sarah explained, manipulating the display to highlight specific data streams. "They follow predictable patterns based on the attacker's objectives and capabilities." General Morrison watched intently as Sarah's analysis revealed hidden connections between seemingly unrelated network events. "How long did it take you to develop these methods?" "About 4 years of research and development," Sarah replied, pulling up additional displays. "Most of the foundational work was done during my doctoral studies, but the practical applications came from working on real-world cases." As the analysis progressed, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The probing attacks weren't random testing. They were systematic reconnaissance designed to map the base's entire network infrastructure. Someone was planning something much larger than a simple data breach. General Chen stood up and moved closer to the displays. "This shows coordination across multiple time zones. We're looking at a global operation." Sarah nodded grimly. "The attack signatures suggest at least 3 different teams working in coordination. They're sharing intelligence and adapting their techniques based on our defensive responses." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just another cybersecurity incident. It was a sophisticated, multinational effort to penetrate one of America's most secure military installations. General Morrison activated his secure phone. "I need to brief the Pentagon immediately. This changes everything." Sarah continued her analysis, revealing more details about the attackers' methods and objectives. Each new discovery painted a more serious picture of the threat they were facing. "General," Sarah said quietly, "there's something else you need to see." Sarah's fingers moved rapidly across her keyboard as she isolated a specific data stream on the main display. The visualization showed a series of network probes that had occurred over the past 6 weeks. But these weren't like the others. They followed a different pattern, one that made her stomach tighten with concern. "These attacks aren't just reconnaissance," Sarah said, her voice taking on a more urgent tone. "Someone has been inside your network for weeks, possibly months. They've been moving laterally through your systems, mapping everything." General Morrison set down his secure phone and moved closer to the display. "Inside our network? That's impossible. We have multiple layers of security, constant monitoring, and regular security audits." Sarah highlighted a series of data points that appeared as faint traces across the network diagram. "They're using a technique called living off the land. Instead of installing malicious software, they're using your own legitimate network tools against you. It's nearly invisible to traditional security monitoring." General Williams studied the display intently. "Show us exactly what they've accessed." Sarah pulled up another screen that displayed a 3-dimensional map of the base's network infrastructure. Red dots indicated systems that had been compromised, and there were far more red dots than anyone in the room was comfortable seeing. "They've accessed personnel records, operational schedules, communication protocols, and," Sarah paused, highlighting a cluster of particularly sensitive systems. "They've been monitoring your weapons inventory management system." The silence in the room was deafening. General Chen was the first to speak. "How long have they had access to these systems?" Sarah manipulated the timeline display, showing the progression of the intrusion over time. "Based on the data patterns, I estimate they gained initial access approximately 3 months ago. They've been extremely patient, taking only small amounts of data at a time to avoid detection." General Morrison's face had gone pale. 3 months. They could know everything about our operations, our personnel, our capabilities. "It gets worse," Sarah continued, pulling up another analysis screen. "They've been specifically targeting information about visiting officials, security protocols, and meeting schedules. They know when important people are coming to the base and what routes they take." General Williams stood up abruptly. "Are you saying they could have inside information about today's meeting?" Sarah nodded grimly. "It's possible. The level of access they've achieved would certainly include meeting schedules and visitor authorizations." The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. If the attackers knew about today's briefing, they might know that Sarah was coming to expose their operation. The security of the entire investigation could be compromised. General Chen activated another secure communication panel. We need to assume operational security has been compromised. All personnel movements, all communications, everything. Sarah continued her analysis while the generals began implementing emergency protocols. Her software had identified additional concerning patterns in the data. "Generals, there's something else," Sarah called out. "I'm seeing evidence of data being prepared for extraction. Large files are being compressed and staged in hidden directories throughout your network." General Morrison turned back to the displays. "Prepared for extraction? You mean they're planning to steal everything they've gathered?" "More than that," Sarah replied, highlighting the suspicious file activity. "The compression algorithms they're using are specifically designed for rapid transmission. They're not just planning to steal your data. They're planning to do it all at once, probably tonight." The room erupted into activity as the three generals began coordinating response efforts. General Morrison was on his secure phone with Pentagon officials. General Williams was contacting the base's cybersecurity team, and General Chen was implementing lockdown protocols. Sarah continued working, using her advanced analysis tools to map out the full extent of the intrusion. What she discovered made the situation even more serious than she had initially thought. "Generals," Sarah called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I need you to see this immediately." The three men gathered around her workstation as she displayed a new analysis screen. This one showed network connections extending beyond the base's systems, reaching out to servers located around the world. "They're not just gathering information for themselves," Sarah explained. "They're sharing it in real time with multiple external organizations. This isn't just espionage. It's a coordinated intelligence operation involving multiple countries." General Morrison studied the global connection map. "Can you identify which countries?" Sarah manipulated the display to show the geographic distribution of the external servers. "Based on the server locations and network routing patterns, I'm seeing connections to servers in at least 5 different countries. The primary coordination appears to be coming from servers in Eastern Europe, but there are significant secondary nodes in Asia and South America." General Williams leaned over Sarah's shoulder. "This is a massive operation. The level of coordination and resources required suggests nation-state level backing." "It's more than that," Sarah replied, pulling up additional analysis data. "The attack patterns and techniques being used match signatures from at least 3 different advanced persistent threat groups. They're working together." General Chen shook his head in disbelief. "Competing intelligence agencies working together? That's unprecedented." Sarah highlighted specific technical indicators on the display. "The evidence is clear. Different groups are using their specialized techniques in coordination with each other. Someone has managed to organize what amounts to a cyber coalition." The secure phone on the table rang, and General Morrison answered it immediately. After a brief conversation, he hung up and turned to the others. That was the Pentagon. "They've detected similar intrusions at 2 other major installations. This isn't just about Fort Harrison. It's a coordinated attack on multiple targets." Sarah's analysis had revealed the scope of the threat, but it had also provided valuable intelligence about the attackers' methods and objectives. Her software was now tracking the intruders' activities in real time, giving the base's defenders unprecedented visibility into the ongoing operation. "I can use their own techniques against them," Sarah announced. "If they're using your legitimate network tools, I can track their movements and predict their next actions." General Williams looked at her with hope. "Can you stop them?" Sarah's expression was determined. "I can do better than that. I can feed them false information while we gather evidence about their entire operation. But we need to act quickly. They're planning to extract everything tonight." The 3 generals exchanged glances, recognizing that they were facing one of the most serious security breaches in the base's history. But they also realized they had an opportunity to turn the tables on their attackers, thanks to Sarah's expertise and advanced analysis capabilities. "What do you need from us?" General Morrison asked. Sarah was already formulating a plan. "I need access to your network operations center and authorization to implement active countermeasures. We're going to catch these attackers in the act and trace them back to their source." Within 15 minutes, Sarah found herself in Fort Harrison's Network Operations Center, a high-tech facility that looked more like a space mission control room than a traditional military office. Dozens of monitors lined the walls, displaying real-time network traffic, security alerts, and system status information. Military technicians worked at multiple workstations, their faces illuminated by the glow of computer screens. Colonel James Patterson, the base's chief information security officer, greeted Sarah with a mixture of respect and urgency. "Ms. Martinez, I've heard about your reputation, but I have to admit I'm skeptical about anyone being able to track these intruders. They've been invisible to our best monitoring systems for months." Sarah set up her laptop at a central workstation and began connecting to the base's core network systems. "That's because they've been using your own tools against you, Colonel. Traditional monitoring looks for malicious software and unusual network traffic. These attackers are using legitimate programs and mimicking normal user behavior." General Morrison, who had followed them to the operations center, watched as Sarah's analysis software began painting a real-time picture of network activity. "Show us what you're seeing." The main display screen transformed into a living map of the base's network, with data flowing like rivers of light between different systems. Sarah's software highlighted suspicious activities in red, while normal traffic appeared in blue and green. There, Sarah pointed to several red streams moving through the network. "Those are your intruders, active right now. They're accessing the personnel database and copying files to a staging area." Colonel Patterson stared at the display in amazement. "I can see them actually working inside our systems. How is this possible?" "My analysis software doesn't just look at what programs are running," Sarah explained. "It analyzes behavior patterns, data access sequences, and timing patterns that are unique to human operators versus automated systems." One of the military technicians called out from his workstation. "Ma'am, I'm seeing unusual activity in the communications archive system. Large files are being accessed and compressed." Sarah quickly pulled up additional monitoring displays. "They're accelerating their timeline. Something has made them nervous, probably our discovery of their operation." General Williams, who had been coordinating with other bases, joined the group. "The Pentagon reports that similar acceleration is happening at the other compromised installations. They're all moving to extraction phase simultaneously." Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard as she implemented her countermeasure plan. "I'm going to feed them false information while we trace their command and control infrastructure. But we need to be subtle. If they realize we've detected them, they might trigger destructive protocols." "Destructive protocols?" Colonel Patterson asked with concern. "Many sophisticated intrusion operations include the ability to damage systems if they're discovered," Sarah explained while working. "We need to make them think they're still undetected while we gather intelligence about their entire network." Sarah began implementing what she called honey traps. Fake but convincing data that would be irresistible to the attackers. She created false personnel files, fictional operational plans, and misleading security schedules, all designed to draw the intruders into revealing more about their objectives. "Brilliant," General Morrison said as he watched the false data being strategically placed throughout the network. "You're giving them exactly what they want to steal, but it's all fabricated." "More than that," Sarah replied, highlighting new connections appearing on the display. "The false data contains hidden tracking codes. When they transmit it to their external servers, we'll be able to map their entire command structure." Within an hour, Sarah's honey traps were working perfectly. The intruders were eagerly gathering the false intelligence, unaware that each piece of stolen data was providing valuable information about their operation. "Look at this," Sarah called out, displaying a new analysis screen. "The tracking data shows they're not just sending information to foreign servers. There's a coordination node right here in the United States." Colonel Patterson leaned closer to examine the data. "Domestic coordination? Are you saying there are American collaborators?" Sarah manipulated the network trace display, following the data flows back to their sources. "The evidence suggests someone with legitimate access to military networks is coordinating with foreign intelligence services. This is treason at the highest levels." The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. Bad enough that foreign adversaries had penetrated their systems, but the possibility of domestic collaboration made the situation exponentially more serious. General Williams activated a secure communication channel. "I need to brief the FBI immediately. If there are domestic collaborators, this becomes a matter for federal law enforcement." Sarah continued her analysis, using the tracking data to build a comprehensive picture of the entire espionage network. Her software was identifying connections between different cells, mapping communication patterns, and revealing the organizational structure of the operation. "Generals, I'm seeing something that changes everything," Sarah announced. The domestic coordination node isn't just facilitating this operation, it's the command center. The foreign servers are taking orders from someone here in the United States. Colonel Patterson stared at the evidence on the screen. An American citizen is running an international espionage operation against their own country? The data doesn't lie, Sarah replied. All command and control traffic is originating from a server farm outside Washington, D.C. Someone with significant resources and technical expertise is orchestrating this entire operation. General Morrison was already coordinating with federal authorities. The FBI and NSA are mobilizing teams to investigate the domestic connection. But we need to maintain our surveillance until they can act. Sarah nodded and continued monitoring the attackers' activities. I can keep them believing they're undetected for several more hours. That should give law enforcement time to coordinate simultaneous raids on all the identified locations. As the afternoon progressed, Sarah's analysis revealed more details about the scope and sophistication of the espionage operation. The attackers had been systematically targeting military installations, defense contractors, and government agencies for over a year. Fort Harrison was just one target in a much larger intelligence-gathering effort. This is the most comprehensive foreign intelligence operation we've seen in decades, General Williams observed. The level of coordination and resources involved suggests state-level backing at the highest levels. Sarah highlighted new data on her displays. It gets worse. They've been using the intelligence they gathered to influence defense contracting decisions, military deployments, and strategic planning. This isn't just espionage. It's active manipulation of American military policy. The evidence was overwhelming, but Sarah knew they needed to maintain their surveillance until law enforcement could act. The attackers were still actively gathering intelligence, unaware that their every move was being monitored and recorded. How much longer can we maintain the deception? Colonel Patterson asked. Sarah checked her monitoring systems. They're planning to complete their data extraction by midnight tonight. We can maintain surveillance until then, but after that they'll either disappear or realize they've been compromised. General Morrison looked at his watch. 6 hours until midnight. Federal law enforcement says they'll be ready to move by 2200 hours. Sarah smiled grimly. Perfect. By the time they realize what's happened, we'll have enough evidence to dismantle their entire network. At exactly 2200 hours, coordinated raids began across 3 states. Sarah watched from the Network Operations Center as FBI teams simultaneously struck locations in Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. Her tracking software provided real-time updates as the command and control servers went offline one by one. Target Alpha is secure, came the radio report from the Virginia team. We have the primary server farm and 3 suspects in custody. Target Bravo secured, reported the Maryland team. Significant computer equipment seized, 2 suspects apprehended. Sarah monitored her displays as the espionage network began collapsing. They're realizing something is wrong. I'm seeing panic communications between the remaining nodes. General Morrison stood behind her, watching the digital manhunt unfold. Can they escape through any remaining connections? Not anymore, Sarah replied, implementing the final phase of her countermeasure plan. I'm now blocking all their escape routes and forcing their remaining communications through monitored channels. The main display showed the espionage network shrinking rapidly as servers went dark and communication links were severed. What had been a sprawling international operation just hours earlier was now reduced to a few isolated nodes desperately trying to maintain contact with each other. Colonel Patterson received updates from the FBI Coordination Center. The suspects are talking. The primary coordinator was a former NSA contractor named David Chen, who had been selling intelligence to foreign buyers for over 2 years. Sarah continued tracking the remaining active nodes. There are still 3 foreign servers that haven't been shut down. They're in countries where we don't have law enforcement cooperation. Can we do anything about those? General Williams asked. Sarah smiled as she implemented another sophisticated technique. I've been feeding them corrupted data for the past hour. Their stolen intelligence is now completely unreliable. They have worse than nothing. They have false information that will lead them to wrong conclusions. The genius of Sarah's approach became clear as the foreign servers continued operating with compromised data. Not only had the espionage network been disrupted, but their intelligence gathering had been turned into a counterintelligence operation. Remarkable, General Morrison said. You've not only stopped them from stealing our secrets, You've made them steal false information that serves our purposes. Sarah pulled up a summary display showing the full scope of what had been accomplished. We've identified and neutralized the entire domestic network, provided evidence for federal prosecution, and turned their remaining foreign operations into sources of disinformation. The radio crackled with another update from the FBI teams. Target Charlie secured. We've recovered servers containing intelligence on 17 different military installations and over 40 defense contractors. Colonel Patterson shook his head in amazement. The scope of this operation was incredible. Without your analysis, they could have continued operating indefinitely. Sarah began documenting her findings for the official investigation report. The really concerning part is how long they went undetected. Traditional security monitoring completely missed them, because they were using legitimate tools and mimicking normal user behavior. General Williams reviewed the evidence on the displays. What does this mean for our security going forward? It means we need to fundamentally change how we think about network security, Sarah replied. We can't just look for malicious software anymore. We need to analyze behavior patterns and detect when legitimate tools are being used for illegitimate purposes. As the evening progressed, more details emerged about the captured espionage operation. The stolen intelligence included detailed information about weapons systems, troop movements, diplomatic communications, and strategic planning documents. The damage assessment would take weeks to complete. The good news, Sarah noted, is that most of the stolen intelligence is now compromised. They can't trust anything they gathered because they don't know what's real and what's false. General Morrison was already planning the next steps. We need to brief Congress, update our security protocols, and coordinate with allies who may have been targeted by similar operations. Sarah's analysis had revealed connections between the Fort Harrison intrusion and similar activities at installations belonging to allied nations. The espionage network had been truly global in scope, targeting military and government systems across multiple countries. I'm seeing evidence of coordination with at least 12 different countries, Sarah reported. This wasn't just about stealing American secrets. It was about mapping the entire Western defense establishment. The implications were staggering. If successful, the espionage operation would have given hostile nations unprecedented insight into American and allied military capabilities, planning, and vulnerabilities. Colonel Patterson was coordinating with cybersecurity teams at other installations. Similar operations have been detected at bases in Germany, Japan, and Australia. Your analysis techniques are being shared with allied cybersecurity teams. Sarah felt a sense of satisfaction as she completed her documentation. The methodology I used here can be adapted to detect these types of intrusions at any installation. We're sharing the detection algorithms with all allied military networks. As midnight approached, Sarah's countermeasure operation was declared a complete success. The domestic espionage network had been dismantled, foreign operations had been compromised, and new security protocols were being implemented to prevent similar intrusions. Ms. Martinez, General Morrison said formally, on behalf of the United States military, I want to thank you for your exceptional service today. Your expertise has prevented what could have been one of the most damaging intelligence breaches in our nation's history. Sarah packed up her equipment, feeling the satisfaction that came from a job well done. Thank you, General. This is exactly why I do this work. General Williams escorted her toward the exit. I have to ask, when you arrived at the gate this morning and Sergeant Thompson refused to let you in, did you have any idea what you would discover? Sarah laughed softly. I knew there was a serious intrusion, but I had no idea how serious. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when you're just trying to do your job properly. As they walked through the corridors of Building 7, Sarah reflected on the events of the day. A routine security consultation had turned into the exposure of a massive international espionage operation. Her expertise had not only protected Fort Harrison, but had contributed to national security at the highest levels. Will Sergeant Thompson face disciplinary action? Sarah asked as they approached the exit. General Morrison considered the question. He'll receive additional training on security protocols and visitor procedures. His mistake was serious, but it didn't compromise the mission. Sometimes good people make poor decisions under pressure. Sarah nodded approvingly. Everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes. 3 weeks later, Sarah returned to Fort Harrison for a follow-up security assessment. As her taxi approached the main gate, she could see that significant changes had been implemented. New security equipment was visible, additional personnel were stationed at the checkpoint, and the entire entrance area had been renovated with enhanced monitoring systems. Sergeant Thompson was still at his post, but his demeanor was completely different from their first encounter. When he saw Sarah approaching, he immediately checked his computer system and processed her visitor authorization efficiently and professionally. "Good morning, Ms. Martinez," Thompson said respectfully. "You're cleared for access to Building 7, Conference Room A. Would you like an escort?" Sarah smiled warmly. "Good morning, Sergeant Thompson. I know the way, but thank you for asking." Thompson handed her a VIP visitor badge and opened the gate. "Ma'am, I want to apologize again for my behavior during your last visit. There's no excuse for how I treated you." "Sergeant, you were doing your job as you understood it," Sarah replied graciously. "What matters is that we learned from the experience and improved our procedures." As Sarah walked across the courtyard, she reflected on how much had changed since that morning 3 weeks ago. The espionage investigation had made national headlines. Several suspects had been charged with treason, and the military had implemented comprehensive new cybersecurity protocols based on her recommendations. Building 7 looked the same from the outside, but Sarah knew that extensive upgrades had been made to the internal security systems. Her behavioral analysis software was now integrated into the base's network monitoring infrastructure, providing real-time detection of suspicious activities. General Morrison was waiting for her in Conference Room A, along with Colonel Patterson and several other military cybersecurity specialists. The room had been upgraded with new displays and analysis equipment that would allow them to demonstrate the improved security capabilities. "Ms. Martinez, welcome back," General Morrison said as she entered. "I'm pleased to report that the security enhancements based on your recommendations have been fully implemented and are working perfectly." Sarah set up her laptop and connected to the upgraded systems. "Excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing how the new monitoring capabilities are performing." Colonel Patterson activated the main display, which showed a comprehensive view of the base's network security status. "We've detected and blocked over 200 attempted intrusions since implementing your behavioral analysis protocols. Most importantly," General Morrison added, "we've identified 3 additional long-term intrusions that had been operating undetected for months. Your techniques revealed attackers that our previous security systems had completely missed." Sarah reviewed the security logs and analysis reports. The improvements were impressive. The base's network security had been transformed from reactive monitoring to proactive threat hunting. Instead of waiting for attacks to be discovered after damage was done, the new systems could identify and neutralize threats in real time. "The behavioral analysis algorithms are working better than I expected," Sarah noted as she studied the data. "The false positive rate is less than 2%, which means your security team isn't overwhelmed with unnecessary alerts." One of the cybersecurity specialists raised his hand. "Ms. Martinez, we've been contacted by bases around the world asking for help implementing similar systems. Your techniques are becoming the new standard for military network security." Sarah felt a sense of pride in knowing that her work was having a broader impact. "I'm working with the Pentagon to develop training programs so that cybersecurity teams at every installation can implement these methods." General Morrison activated a secure communication link. "Speaking of broader impact, I have someone who wants to speak with you." The main display switched to a video conference connection, and the face of a distinguished older woman appeared on the screen. Sarah recognized her immediately as General Patricia Hayes, the highest-ranking woman in the United States military, and a key figure in national cybersecurity policy. "Ms. Martinez," General Hayes said from her Pentagon office, "your work at Fort Harrison has had implications far beyond a single base. The techniques you developed have been shared with our closest allies and are being implemented throughout NATO." Sarah was surprised by the scope of the impact. "I'm honored that the work has proven so valuable, General Hayes." "More than valuable, revolutionary," General Hayes continued. "Traditional cybersecurity has been focused on building higher walls. Your approach of understanding attacker behavior and turning their own techniques against them represents a fundamental shift in how we think about network defense." Colonel Patterson pulled up additional displays showing security improvements at other installations. "Bases that have implemented your behavioral analysis systems have seen a 90% improvement in threat detection and a complete elimination of long-term undetected intrusions." Sarah studied the global deployment data with satisfaction. What had started as a single security consultation had evolved into a comprehensive transformation of military cybersecurity practices worldwide. "There's something else," General Morrison said, pulling out an official document. "The President has authorized the creation of a new Cybersecurity Innovation Center, and you've been selected to serve as its first director." Sarah was speechless. The offer represented recognition at the highest levels of government and an opportunity to shape the future of national cybersecurity policy. The position would involve working directly with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, coordinating with international allies, and leading the development of next-generation security technologies, General Hayes explained from the video link. Sarah took a moment to process the magnitude of the opportunity. "This is incredibly generous, but I need to ask, what happened to Sergeant Thompson?" General Morrison smiled. "Sergeant Thompson completed additional training and has been promoted to Security Training Coordinator. He's now responsible for training other security personnel on proper visitor procedures and threat assessment. His experience with you has made him one of our most effective trainers. He requested the position specifically," Colonel Patterson added. "He said he wanted to make sure no other security personnel would make the same mistakes he did." Sarah felt genuinely pleased by this news. "That's wonderful. It shows real character to turn a mistake into an opportunity to help others." The meeting continued for another hour, with detailed discussions about the new Cybersecurity Innovation Center and its mission. Sarah would have access to unlimited resources, the best technical talent in the world, and direct support from the highest levels of government. As the meeting concluded, Sarah walked back across the courtyard toward the main gate. The base looked the same as it had 3 weeks ago, but she knew that everything had changed. The security improvements implemented based on her work had transformed Fort Harrison into one of the most secure installations in the world. At the gate, Sergeant Thompson was completing his shift. When he saw Sarah approaching, he stepped out of his booth to speak with her personally. "Ms. Martinez," he said formally, "I wanted you to know that your professionalism during our difficult first meeting has been an inspiration to me and the entire security team. You handled a bad situation with grace and dignity." Sarah shook his hand warmly. "Sergeant Thompson, everyone makes mistakes. What defines us is how we learn from them and use them to become better. You've done exactly that." Thompson smiled with obvious pride. "Thank you, ma'am. I hope you'll consider taking the position they offered you. The military needs people like you." As Sarah left Fort Harrison for what might be the last time as a civilian consultant, she reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had begun with a simple refusal to check an ID. A security guard's mistake had led to the exposure of an international espionage network, the transformation of military cybersecurity practices, and now an opportunity to serve at the highest levels of national security. Sometimes the most important moments in life come disguised as ordinary inconveniences. Sarah smiled as she realized that being refused entry at a military gate had ultimately opened doors she never could have imagined.